And without further ado, I'd like to introduce our guests today. Our moderator for this session is Claudia Hébert. Claudia is a radio host and culture reporter for Radio-Canada, sharing her time between Toronto and Montreal. She's also a filmmaker, having directed many short films. Joining us as well is the writer and director of Nadia Butterfly, Pascal Plante. Pascal is a Montreal-based filmmaker whose first narrative feature, a punk romance entitled Fake Tattoos, competed at the Berlinale and Generation 14 Plus in 2018. After his graduation from Concordia University's Mel Hoppenheim School of Cinema, Pascal co-founded the production company Nemesis Films, with which he directed numerous short films, including Blast Beat, Blue-Eyed Blonde, and Nona. Pascal considers himself a cinephile who became a narrative filmmaker with documentarian tendencies. His latest feature film, Nadia Butterfly, has been included in the official selection of the 73rd edition of the Cannes Film Festival in 2020. I'll pass it off to Claudia. Thank you all so much and welcome.
Thank you. Hi, Pascal.
Hi, salut. Hi, Claudia.
Hello, everyone. It's such a pleasure to be here today to discuss this fantastic film. Like we just said, 3 nominations at the CSA this year. Yes, we just said at Cannes as well. This very weekend, it won 2 prizes at the Rendezvous Québec Cinéma in Montreal, Best Film and Best Script, which he won ex aequo with Souterrain Underground, which is also nominated at the CSA. So Nadia Butterfly, the last Olympic race of a swimmer who now faces the rest of her life. What will it be for her after she's no longer an athlete? I suggest we first take a look at some of the images, and then I have so many questions.
Je connais pas grand monde dans ton âge qui ont voyagé comme ça partout autour du monde.
C'est sûr là, que la piscine à Moscou, la piscine à Budapest, c'était bien beau, là. Mais c'est quand même juste des piscines.
29,7, 29,9. 30,4, 30,7. C'est bon, guys. Come on. On y retourne. Et hop!
Tu te rappelles-tu la première fois que tu as fait un 200 fly? Je pense que t'avais 11 ans. Je me rappelle tellement, là, je t'ai vu, je me suis dit, hey, elle va aller loin.
Comme athlète de haut niveau, je sais qu'on rêve tous de remporter cette médaille olympique.
Sincèrement, bravo, puis ça va vraiment pas être pareil sans toi.
Hey, non, d'un pied devant l'autre, t'es capable!
C'est quoi le but si je suis même pas capable de marcher avec? Je fais la manche papillon.
Papillon?
Ben plus que... comme ça.
Nadia, c'était, tout le monde le savait, ta dernière course. Est-ce que ça te mettait une pression supplémentaire?
Whether you're in the pool, I don't care. Whether you're in the audience, you go harder, all right?
If you have questions at any moment, just write it in the Q&A box and I'll try to squeeze them in all the way through the conversation. But if you want to ask a question in person, not write it down, but open your video and ask the question, you can also raise your hand. And by the end, I'll give the microphone to you or the video to you so you can ask your question directly to Pascal. But first of all, let's start with how this story is anchored into your experience, because you were not an Olympic swimmer, but you were a swimmer.
Yes, I was. I did all my high school doing sports and studies. You know, I only had classes in the before noon, and then I would swim. I swam 8 times a week for the longest time, and I swam to national level. I stopped at 19 years old, so that's still fairly young. I mean, the peak of a male athlete in swimming is more around 25, 26 or something. So I had a lot of good years still ahead of me, but you're at the point where you're basically gambling your 20s, and it's a big gamble. And I was passionate about cinema, and cinema is not something you can do 50% of the time. You have to do it 100%, otherwise it'll become a hobby. And
same with swimming.
Same with swimming, kind of thing. So instead of just doing both kind of halfway, I decided to quit swimming and devote my time and passion to something else, which was cinema at that point. So
was
yeah,
there a bit of a similar heartbreak for you when you knew it was your last race?
That's the thing. Yes and no, though. So again, so I used to be a swimmer, but it's not my story. I swam before it became my life, like before I could define myself wholeheartedly, entirely as a swimmer. So my transition was smooth because I was transferring my passion to something else. But I had other friends that kept pursuing their swimming careers. I had friends that did the Beijing Olympics, London Olympics, Rio Olympics. I saw various types of retirement. I saw happy ones. I saw bitter ones. So it's more a film that is based on observations than even maybe my own retirement, which was again fairly smooth. I had no regrets, and I stopped swimming for the longest time. And I just told you off camera, right? But just before that, I just picked it up again. Like I started swimming again after I completed Nadia Butterfly. It brought me back in such a nostalgic mood that, and just having the conversations with the athletes and just seeing that word, the odor of chlorine, everything, it just came back so brutally, but in a good way. And so now I have fun. The pools are open in Quebec, so I can swim almost every day. I'm back at it, back in my Speedo.
What gave you the spark for the script, the inkling that there was a film there?
I've had the idea very early on. I as early as 2013 even. Just the rough idea of doing a film that deals about the retirement of athletes and the backstage of the Olympics. I tended to feel that the Olympians are portrayed as demigods and very. It's really rare that I saw a depiction of like complex beings and flawed beings in narrative fictions. You would see them in documentaries of sometimes, but in narrative films, very, very, very rarely. And that's always the case. I'm always inspired by what I don't see in other people's films. So just having a realistic portrayal of an elite athlete's life, retirement, what it means winning and losing is so binary in most sports movies, where it's a very complex notion. You can win and be unfulfilled, and you can it's very, very, very complex. And so the rough idea, I've had it as early as 2013, but it's after my first feature film, Les Faux Tatouages, Fake Tattoos, that I felt equipped enough as a filmmaker to tackle that story because it was so close to me. I wanted to do it right, and we needed more substantial budget than maybe what the first feature what we could have for a first feature. So I picked it up again right after Les Faux Tatouages, and it became Nadia Butterfly, the film that you're seeing. Started writing the screenplay in 2017. We shot in 2019 before COVID hit.
Yeah.
And 1 year later, the film was finished.
And when you say the very binary thing, is because most sports movie, even when they are a little bit more, even when they go deeper around the main character, there's always the final race. There's always the final match. There's always this gold medal. Will she or won't she get it? And was it early on in the process that you thought, I'm going to get that part of the story done really quickly?
Yeah, it's not. I didn't necessarily want to be original for the sake of originality, but really, I was trying to make a portrait of a character that wants to. She's almost a robot at the beginning of the film. Like, she has such high goals for herself, that she cannot even grieve the loss of a disappointing race, that she's still programmed to perform, and it is kind of like this. And so for me, it just is not interesting to do a psychological portrait of an athlete as it is trying to achieve its goal. I mean, it makes for a good drama, it makes for a good proven structure. I mean, how many Rockies can we make, right? I mean, there's so many.
The answer is we can do many of them.
Of course, and they're great. I have nothing against them per se, but it's, if I want to make a nuanced psychological portrait, they have to become human beings, because the robot is not that interesting. It's almost a Pinocchio story in a way, and she has to become human early on in the film so that we can see her progress. And it's clumsy. She's very ill at ease in her body with her social skills, and that's very deliberate. In so many ways, elite sports makes for almost infantilisant. It makes you almost like
a
immature.
child.
Yeah, immature by default, because you basically do what you're told, and so there's literally a line like this in the movie: you travel the world, but you don't get to experience it in an adult way, in a complex way. And
you don't book your trips, you don't book the hotel, you just see the pools and you're taken care of. And you're not independent.
Exactly. And Nadia is critical of that. And since she already has her decision, so the film starts, she already knows she wants out, but she almost wants out like somebody wants out a house on fire. Like, you just know you have to leave, because, and also the notion of a character being burdened by her talent felt very interesting to me. I've had so many friends that were destined for great things in swimming, and either they just didn't love it enough, or so many other factors, but like they had to stop their career at some point, and that makes for a very interesting. It's almost like the sacrifices are just too hard to bear, even though you could make a living, keep swimming, you still have great years ahead of you, but she wants out like a house on fire.
So for you, it's clear that she doesn't regret, because I was wondering watching the film, is there a lingering, maybe, is there, the coach is really like, we'll be there if you want to come back. Is it for you, is it clear for her, or is she still on the fence? Could she,
of course she's on the fence. Of
Yeah.
course, we see so many athletes making comebacks, and it's for a reason. It's for a reason. That's all these people know sometimes, and super hard to let go. And you're defining yourself in such an overachiever mindset that, like, I guess I'll say the mediocrity or just the normality of a normal life.
Yeah.
It's just not thrilling enough, and that's like you're hooked. Adrenaline is a drug in a way. Like, you're hooked. Your brain is hooked on it, and it's super hard to let go. Even though you might think like, I'm fed up with it, maybe in 3 months you'll be back in the pool, and it's super hard to go out of this. And so Nadia wants out, but she's tested. That's what happens basically. So she doesn't necessarily change her mind, but she's more equipped psychologically to understand the reasons, and to also acknowledge what she loved about it and what she will miss. And what I miss the most, and what most people miss the most, is two things. Usually it's the adrenaline of it and the friendships. It makes for super intense friendships. The sense of community, it's very engrossing, and we seek that as humans in anything in life. We seek a sense of belonging, and sports gives you that. It gives you a purpose. And with a community and with friends, and it's intense, and you're hooked on that. And of course she will miss that. It's open-ended in the sense that she leaves the athletes behind at the end, but who knows? So many people come back. And like I said, I mean, even 12 years later, now I'm back in the pool just for fun, but still, I mean, once a swimmer, always a swimmer.
I have two great questions from Devki Patel. First of all, he's asking, Nadia Butterfly. So of course we saw it in the trailer. It's the style, and I'm miming it now. So like her in the film. But he's asking, it's symbolizing growth in new life when you talk of butterfly. Was this your intent?
Oh yeah, sure. There's a bit of a play with the title, and even the choice of name, Nadia. Maybe it's more of a Montreal thing, but like Nadia, it smells Olympic. Like
because of Comaneci?
Nadia Comaneci and the 1976 Olympics, and when I had to come up with a name, it just that's the first, like, what is a name that's synonymous with Olympics, and that was it. So that's the Nadia part. But yes, of course, as you mentioned, the butterfly is you have a literal way of interpreting it, and more a metaphorical way of interpreting it. And in that sense, maybe like her sports life is like a cocoon, and she really wants out. Like she really wants to grow and be autonomous. Autonomous, is that a word? Like she wants to evolve in a way. So there's of course, yes, it was there from the get-go.
So I have two people asking about the actors, Devki Patel again and Stéphane Verna. But I'm going to, before you talk about the casting, let's talk about the fact that swimmers helped you? Like they read your scripts. You had like outside advisor from the swimming world advising you. That's how it started, that collaboration.
Sure. Yes. So I knew swimming enough, I guess, and I've had access also to like all the a lot of backstage videos from the Rio Olympics from one of my friends. And so for art direction and like research, it was all there. And you get to see what you don't see on TV, which is fascinating to me, at least, and I hope it is to you. So there was that, but I still needed consultants that actually did Olympics. And Catherine Savard came in fairly early in the process. At that point, I didn't know I wanted her as Nadia necessarily, but she read the script. She did the London and Rio Olympics, so she also had two experiences, and she said those were two very different experiences for her too. So she could almost like come up with a synthesis of those two Olympics and kind of take away what is universal about both. And that really helped. And yeah, so she started as a script consultant, precisely, down to the details of things I wasn't even aware of. That, in the Olympics, it's not like a press conference. It's very like a corridor of press, like you see in the beginning of the film. Like I was not aware that it was like this. Just details, and I like that. I think even if it's a fiction film, if I were to watch a film about I don't know, curling, I'm saying anything like it's like you can take away something and learn something. Like you can get closer to a world you don't have access to. Like a good fiction does that. Like it's the art of empathy, and you empathize and with people that are not like you, that don't do the same thing as you, that might not be from your country, don't speak your language. That's the beauty of cinema. And to me, it comes with research. If it shows that the film is super fabriqué, like artificial,
or it's very fictitious.
Yeah, well, to the point where I don't even get the sense that I'm into a world. Yeah, I much prefer films that have that attention to details. So I wanted that attention to details. And seriously, like even if sometimes they use technical terms that the regular audience might not understand, I so don't care about that. Like what's important is that the characters understand each other, and that the audience understands that they understand each other, and they understand the l'enjeu, like the stakes. Yeah. If the stakes are understood, then of course, like bring me all the terminology of like elite swimming. That's if I were to watch a ballet dancing, I'd love to hear those words. Like how are they talking about their craft? And yeah, anyway, long story short.
And how did she become your main actress?
Regular casting. So at one point, what I did is that I went. It was a pan-Canadian cast too. So we even had an actress that came, a swimmer that came from the BC, Vancouver, the one who plays Karen in the film. And anyway, so what I did
is I went, Hilary Caldwell, right?
Hilary Caldwell.
You have Kellen McMurray as well, yeah. And
Hilary.
Ariadne Mainville. So the whole four swimmers who are competing together are real Olympic swimmers.
Exactly. Yes. Hilary Caldwell actually won a medal in the Rio Olympics too, but she retired right before. But the other three are active swimmers. So that's also something, because we had to tailor the schedule based on their super busy schedule, because they are completing their studies and swimming full time, and they have like literally 2 weeks off in a year of swimming, and I put them in a movie during those 2 weeks, which is, they're really, really intense women and talented. And so I did casting. I went on the websites to see, like I basically lined up the top 20, 25 swimmers in any strokes, and then I stalked them online. I literally did that, and then I, based on that, you can take away a lot from Instagram stories. By the way, it's great for casting. And then I could narrow that down, and I saw maybe 15, 20. I didn't see that many girls. So all in all, for all the roles, I only maybe saw 15 girls, but they all had the profile basically, and Catherine Savard ended up, I felt, being the best. And it's a lucky accident that she also was the best butterfly swimmer in Quebec. So it's like a win-win situation there. And story short, but the Ariadne Mainville is her actual training partner and best friend in real life. And she also has a natural charisma, so it worked. She was going on her own. We did a callback audition to see their chemistry. They obviously had a great chemistry because they're friends in real life, and that's how they got on board.
But then the chemistry is there, and all the swimming scenes, it's easier because it's something they actually do. It's not something they have to learn for the film. But is it maybe a trap to have those non-professional learning a new craft? Like that was tricky. That was a big challenge. It could have not worked.
Sure. Well, that's where we need to find. If, for instance, I did not find a proper Nadia based on maybe the 15 girls I saw, I might have gone back to maybe an actor. But it's what you gain and what you lose. Because I have such a high respect for actors. I don't cast non-actors just for the sake of casting non-actors. Like, you really have to ask yourself, like, why am I not casting actors? And I wanted the audience to connect with them through their actual performance. Again, maybe that's my love of maybe musicals, or I don't know. But if I watch a Fred Astaire movie and you see him tap dance in long takes, I love him.
Ginger Rogers.
It's just like, and Ginger Rogers. I love them, I love them because of that. And if you see that they are actually performing at, top 20 in the world level, kind of butterfly, my gamble was that you will connect to her based on that. And even all the way to her body, I not to boil her down to her physique, but you just don't get those shoulders.
No.
That's a life of swimming, and that's 40 kilometers in the pool every week for 15 years that does that, so you don't have to dig into a backstory when you have a body and a craft and a skill like that. The backstory is tattooed on them, so I could really devote my time on that tipping point of the retirement, which is what I wanted. But it was a gamble, and I thought that I would have to adjust my mise en scène, my directing style way more than I ended up doing. I did not, frankly, think that they could pull off long takes. Like, there's a scene in the bar where Catherine Savard had like 8 pages of dialogue.
Yeah.
And we did the first one. I actually had a shot list on that day, but like, even based on the first take, I was like, oh no, you know what? We'll actually work it out in the long take. She's good enough now. We ended up doing maybe 10, 12 takes. And we ended up having a great one.
But were there lots of rehearsal beforehand, so you could prepare them and workshop the roles? And
no, not really. I'm not. I know it's everybody's different, but I tend to give a lot of responsibility with actors, and so I put pressure on them, and they want to do good. And actors,
and then it's their problem.
It's their problem. It's my problem, really. But it's usually it works when I do that. Like, they understand that it's important. They're athletes. They want to do good. Like, it's not like maybe some other non-actors might have come in not that ready on D-Day or something, but like, athletes, they want to perform, and they wanted to do good, and we all worked together in that direction. And for me, like, directing them, it's really creating a secure environment where they don't feel self-conscious. That's 90% of my job. If like they feel at ease, and we can erase a bit like the heaviness of cinema, and they can, it's not themselves, but it's close to themselves enough so that they can kind of forget themselves and just do it, they'll be good. And it's like working with a child. I mean, if a child is a child, it's going to be a good child on front of the camera. But if the child is frightened by the camera and it's too much in their head and they're self-conscious, it's going to be horrible. And so my work is I'm the one dreading inside. Like, they have to think that it's easy.
Yeah. I have a question from Heather, who is surprised that you actually shot some scenes in Japan, in Tokyo. And I think it's amazing because you use the actual Olympic facilities. And from sometimes we didn't know if anyone was going to use it except basically you. So I always feel that you did a bit of science fiction there. We're supposed to have the games now this year, but
yes.
When the film was picked at Cannes and released, it was almost amazing that
it would have been crazy if without COVID, because that would have been the Cinderella story with like a regular Cannes in May and then the Olympics in July, like, for real. It changed the plans. I don't think it hurts the film. Like it even makes the film even more curious in a weird way. But yeah, we did shoot in Tokyo. We did 16 days in Montreal, so all the indoors, and we did 5 days in Tokyo. But anyway,
so in Tokyo, it's everything outside where you see Tokyo.
Yeah, basically mostly the outside, the outdoors, and the one thing with the Japanese, I guess, is that they're on time, they're ready, and it was the Olympic village was not entirely built, but there were sections of it that were built, and we could use that as actual scenery, and it was a mixture.
And access to the mascots.
The mascot, we created the mascot. So it's a metaphorical Olympics. We knew we wanted to have a metaphorical Olympics. So the logo you see in the film is an alternate logo. The mascots are not the real 2020 mascots. They're similar enough that we don't get in legal trouble, but it's an original design.
Yeah.
And we actually had to ship them because they're handmade. It's basically artisanal. And we shipped the mascot. That was the biggest stress for the producer. Like the mascot needed to arrive like on time and in one piece, in as many pieces as they needed to be. And it was a mixture in Tokyo of we had permits, we had a local crew. We only brought the director of photography, the assistant camera, myself, the producer, and the 2 leads. So everybody else was hired locally. So we did, during the location scouting, we met up with crew, and we hired the sound guy, we hired fixers, and it was a skeleton crew, like a small crew. And we had maybe 75% of access, and maybe 25% of it was like guerrilla shooting, kind of phantom people, shooting in the streets kind of thing.
At this point, I'd like to ask people if you want to ask a question on camera, just click on raise your hand and I'll give you the mic so we can hear your questions and see some of the audience's face. And keep asking questions. We still have some time together. And in the meantime, I'll ask you about the music in your work, because I think it's an important component. In Fake Tattoos, there was this big song that closed the film, and music had such a key place in different scenes. And you have something similar in Nadia Butterfly. You have the center scene with the girls singing, and I feel that pop music pops in here and there. How is it that you work with music? Do you have playlists in the background tailored to each project? And how much does it cost to have the music of your dream?
Right. That's the real question. No, it's so when I get into screenwriting mode, I spend actually some time curating a playlist, just the sound of it. And I was listening to a lot of a musician called Grouper. Her name is Liz Harris. She actually ended up giving me a lot of all the ambient kind of underwater dreamy stuff is all Grouper's music, but not music that was on albums. That was music that was sleeping on her hard drive. So in a way, she's kind of the score composer, but she's not credited as such. But so there was a lot of music that I was listening to, and Beach House. I think it had the good like melancholy. It's like the indie dreamy, but like upbeat enough that like it has the good vibe. That might not be the right word, but and Beach House, the song that is used in the film as a motif, is ended up costing what it ended up costing, but it became the totem song of the film. Like at the wrap party, when I showed just like a mashup of the shoot with bloopers and photos, I already put that song on top of images. So I mean, the crew was attached to the song. We had to have it, and
the heart wants what the hearts want.
And yeah, but so we had to make other compromises in the bar. I wanted to have a LCD sound system song. We ended up switching to a song by a British band called Jungle. Anyway, but so it's a mix of songs that it's always written in the screenplay. And sometimes I don't get them. Sometimes I do.
But you try.
Yeah, I always try. I write letters. Avril Lavigne actually wrote her a letter because it can be insulting, like to bring her back to her like one-hit wonder from the early 2000s. Like I just wanted to come across and to really get her to understand why I chose this song and and I don't know if she ever read it, but at least I actually spent some time to get the rights for the music that I wanted, for sure.
I have a question from Stefan, who'd like to ask the question on camera.
Yay.
If we can bring him in.
That was fun.
Stefan, are you there?
I'm there.
Hi.
And yeah.
Oui, un individu. Hi, hello.
Hey, okay, here we go. Cool. Oh, excellent. Yeah, so I saw your film last night, and then this morning I woke up and I started watching it again because I was like hooked. Like it was like, so I had to stop myself. I was like, okay, I got to work today. I can't. But it was like really, yeah. Well, actually, part of the reason why I wanted to watch your film because I'm writing a feature film about an athlete.
Okay.
So I grew up playing hockey a lot.
Okay.
So similar like you, like I never made it like major junior, but I played a lot. And then so I'm writing a film about a hockey player, and so I've been kind of I've watched all any given Sunday. I've watched all the classical.
I did
films.
too.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then I heard you were on a panel recently with Tracy Deer. Yeah. So I saw you there, and then you talked about your film, and I was like, whoa, I got to check it out. And so I was super, super charmed by your film. Like all your accolades you're getting are really great. So I wanted to ask you, there's one scene in your film, like I think your film for me like worked like on so many levels, but there's one scene where it was one moment where I wasn't sure exactly what was going on, and so basically after she loses her race, so the beginning of the film, she goes into that kind of like chamber, right, where the blue space there, and she starts to cry, right, and then so to the right of her, you see a hand, I guess left screen, right? You see the hand of her friend touching, like she's touching.
There's like the little tent. You mean that moment?
Tent,
yeah. That's after her last race when she breaks down, she cries.
Exactly. Right. So there, at one point, there's a hand touching her. Well, kind of touch, and then so her hand. But then there's another hand in the back, and so for me, like I didn't understand what that hand was, right? Because I don't know how big those tents are. And I was like, is that her teammates? Like, it was like that one moment in the film where c'est un peu décroché parce que I didn't understand.
No, I understand. Right.
I didn't understand what that hand was.
Right. Well, no, yeah, it's good. And thank you for everything you said. Well, it was the hand. Okay. So that's the moment where actually she, when I give that the image that she's a robot and that she becomes human, and that's the tipping point. That's the moment where she breaks down, she cries. There's a mix of so many emotions, but I really wanted at that moment to have kind of a magical twist in a way, because I didn't want the film to be too anchored in reality, even though of course I was seeking authenticity. Of course I was seeking the authentic portrayal of that world, but I also wanted the film to be extremely expressionistic in terms of sound and image, and that to me felt like the perfect time to almost like shift, and with the sound is also slowly shifting,
and this presence of the hand you see like I don't know, presence
and the shot that comes after is like a super stage like shot, like a dolly, lateral dolly of them with the metal, and it's almost too good to be true. Like that's a shot you would see on TV. It's super different than the kind of shots you get. That's the dream, that's the fantasy. And so yes, it is to get all the teammates together, because I mean she cries but she inhibits the other ones to cry. So what was meant to be understood at least at a technical level was that first hand would be Marie-Pierre, her closest friend. She also starts to cry because it's something they lived together for such a long time. Her emotion gets to me and gets to the whole team, and they also get all together and they to break down crying. Now the tent also, to go back to the metaphor of that's the cocoon, I would say, like that's the moment, like after that she becomes something else. So that's why we almost treated it in a very maniéré, like a non-realistic way with the kind of lighting, very expressionistic. I'm not entirely sure if it works perfectly, and it's thank you for being honest. Like some people love it, some people are like, what's up with the hands? I guess a safer way to do it would have been without the hands, maybe just hearing the other crying, but you know, to a degree, during a test screening, it's been brought up and we seriously consider removing the hands. And at one point I was like, you know what, there was a reason behind it, at least metaphorically. So I decided to go for it anyway. And it saved costs in VFX. But
thank you, Stéphane. We can't wait to see your hockey film.
Yeah.
So if you have more questions, now is the time. We still have a few minutes together. Raise your hand or write down a question. Pascal, maybe what's the thing you're most proud about this film? Because it's a long process. You wrote it, you're a director. Now you're receiving awards, and it's the end of the crossing line. You can look back. What's the one thing that you feel you really achieved with this film?
I can boil it down
told
to
me
two
when you were finishing the editing. I remember we met at some festival, and you were saying how proud you were. Of this one.
Maybe okay. I'll be quick. If I get to have another question, it'd be good. But maybe there's three things. The athletes enjoyed the process so much, so I guess that goes to show that. And I consider them friends. When you develop such intense bond, and I treat them as friends, and we work together, and they enjoy it. And during the promotion of the film, like they were so amazed and excited about everything that happened. It was so beautiful and pure to see all of this through their eyes, because it's such a curveball in their life. Like they didn't think they would end up in the film that would even get the Cannes stamp. It's so surreal for them. And through their eyes, I get to fall in love with so many things of cinema, because they would be amazed every day. Like they would look at the camera and the dolly and they would be like, oh, that's amazing. And for me, you take a dolly for granted, but through their eyes, everything is so magical. It's so magical making a film. And so that I'm proud of. I'm proud of the sound work in the film. I do sound design in my also for other people. And it's my first film that I didn't do the sound design myself. I collaborated with a very experienced sound designer. I was there every day, but I'm actually very happy. I think about the sound design. I think it's subjective, it's expressionistic. Again, that's a key word. But it's a lot of detail and work in there. So I'm happy about the sound. And maybe just the fact that it's a strange film. It's because I'm a big cinephile, and I've made so many films that I could pinpoint the references kind of clearly. Oh, that's a hint of Linklater, or that's a hint of Andrea Arnold, or that's a hint of X or Y Cassavetes. I'm a big fan. But Nadia is really weird. Like it's all the aesthetic choice come more from my experience as a swimmer. Like the sound, the image, the way we worked with the blur, it's almost the way you see in the water. It's just every single aesthetic decision are not borrowed from pre-existing work. It all came very organically with the material. And that makes for an odd film. It's oddly paced. It's like, but you know what? Odd is good. When you watch a lot of film, like you want to have an experience, you might not enjoy it, and it's totally fine, but at least maybe you'll think about it. Maybe years from now, you'll still remember the weird Olympic film and about the swimmer, and maybe you'll like it even more as time goes by. And I guess
and you
that's
said
my
something
gamble.
about the aesthetic that you feel that this time it's yours. Let's have a word about your DP, Stéphanie Weber-Biron, because she's nominated as well. She could win cinematography. And there are not so many female DOPs. So, and this year there are like 2 or 3 of them nominated. So it's a fantastic year. How did you work with her? How did you translate your vision or come up with that aesthetic?
Yeah, it was the first time for me working with Steph. I knew her, obviously. I knew her work, obviously. We did lots of prep, and again, just the choice of lens. We used like retro lenses that had the weird deformation with the blurs, and we even enhanced that in post-production. Like we really went for the imperfections. That's what gives, I think, personality to the image, but also. Stéphanie is super creative, and I feel sometimes the DOP don't get to be creative on films that much. And like, so anything would go. Like I would also create an environment with her that like her wildest ideas could like throw them at the wall, and we'll see what sticks. And she even came up with the analog, like she would fill water in front of the camera, and there's a moment where there's water like flowing and for a transition, and that was actually like a device that she built up herself and stuff like that. So she's proud because she got to experiment. And when you allow artists like that to experiment, sometimes it will always be super cool. And she understood what I was going for. So at one point I was like, yeah, have fun. And she had fun.
So we have like a minute left. I have a cinephile question. Arthur is saying, fantastic film, really enjoyed it. Crazy question to you as a cinephile. What's the film you most enjoyed seeing during the last year of pandemic? Give us a recommendation. What should we see after we've seen Nadia Butterfly?
After
what should we see tonight?
Maybe a recent
Canadian film, maybe something that is at
Canadian
the CSA?
film. No. I'm a huge fan of The Nest. I really didn't think it would be that good. The Shunderkin film.
Yes.
I really like Martha Marcimé Marlene, but somehow, like, I saw the poster, I read the synopsis, I did not think I would be blown away that much. I think his directing style is so efficient. Like, it's like one shot a scene, but he knows where to put the camera. It's mind-boggling. Like,
Arthur,
I know I
love that one too. I can say that Arthur, who asked the question, agrees with you. So continue. It is a great film.
And that's like, I got to be really geeky about it when the names of the nominated films for direction came up, and I'm like, there's no way I can win for this guy. Like, I actually I really think he's one of the few like directors that, because I really value a minimalistic yet like efficient. It's, to me, it's almost like, you're playing golf and you do a hole-in-one kind of thing. Like, if you can get to understand what happens in the scene, stage it right, and like understand precisely where to put the camera and like make that hole-in-one. For me personally, that might be a weird ego thing. I don't think it is, but anyway, for you to judge. But like, for me, I value that way more than sometimes like something that is technically hard to do, or a scene that just like relies on editing. I much prefer, and it's a personal opinion, but I much prefer a film that relies on staging and space and time than on sheer editing to create rhythm. And I think Shunderkin does it amazingly.
So now that we say goodbye, we can bring people to another great film that is nominated at the CSA as well. Pascal, thank you so much, and good luck on May 20th, because I'm going to say it again. You're nominated for Best Motion Picture, for Achievement in Direction, and Achievement in Cinematography for Stéphanie Hébert-Biron for Nadia Butterfly.
Ouais, merci. Thank you so much, everyone. Merci.